Imagine you are holding a $4 bottle in your hand. $4, less than your morning coffee, less than a lottery ticket, less than the tip you left at lunch yesterday. Now imagine that this exact bottle, this cheap, unremarkable $4 bottle, permanently stops rust from ever forming on metal again. Not slows it down, not delays it, stops it permanently. I know what you are thinking. You have heard promises like this before. You have spent $40, $80, even $300 on sprays and coatings and treatments that peeled off after one winter. I get it. I was exactly where you are sitting right now. But here's the difference. Every single product you have ever bought from an auto parts store was designed to fail, not by accident, by intention. Because the moment it stops working, you come back and buy another one. That is not a side effect of their business model. That is the entire business model. And the $4 solution that breaks that cycle forever? It has existed for over 3,000 years. It has been validated by NASA. It has been studied by universities across 12 countries. And it costs $4 at any hardware store within 5 miles of where you are right now. The auto industry is not hiding this because it does not work. They are hiding it because it works too well. Stay with me for the next 12 minutes, because by the time this video ends, you will never pay for rust treatment again. Not next year, not ever. Let me give you a number, $412 billion. That is the size of the global corrosion protection industry every single year, $412 billion, not to solve rust, but to manage it, to keep it coming back, to keep you paying. Add another $23 billion from auto part replacements caused directly by rust damage, frame rails, floor pans, brake lines, wheel wells, parts that would never need replacing if the rust was stopped at the source, but they are not stopped at the source because stopping rust at the source is not profitable. Think about that for a moment. $435 billion every year, built entirely on a problem that has already been solved. This is not incompetence. This is architecture. The entire system was deliberately designed so that every solution you buy has an expiration date. Rust converter that lasts 18 months, undercoating that cracks after 2 winters, cavity spray that needs reapplication every single year. You are not buying protection, you are renting it, and the landlord raises the price every time you come back. In 1973, a research team filed a patent for a compound that bonded permanently to iron oxide at the molecular level. The patent was purchased within 2 years by a subsidiary of one of the largest automotive chemical manufacturers in North America. That patent has never been developed into a consumer product. It has been sitting in a filing cabinet for over 50 years. Not because the science failed, because the science worked perfectly. This is what they do. They do not kill good solutions. They buy them. They shelf them, and then they send you back to the store to buy the product that expires in 14 months. The dealers know this. The detailers know this. The guys running the undercoating bays at your local dealership, the ones charging $350 for 40 minutes of work, they absolutely know this. They are not protecting your car. They are protecting their recurring revenue. Here is the part that should make you angry. The solution they have been burying, it is not some complicated chemical formula locked in a laboratory. It is not a military-grade compound with a classified ingredient list. It is sitting on a shelf right now, in a hardware store, in a garden supply shop, in a grocery store in some cases. It is $4, and it has been $4 for as long as anyone can remember, because no corporation ever figured out how to make it expire. Let me take you back. Not 10 years, not 50 years, 3,000 years, ancient Egypt, 1,400 years before Christ. The pharaohs were not just building pyramids, they were engineering war machines, chariots made of wood and iron built to survive desert heat, saltwater humidity from the Nile Delta, and the brutal friction of combat. These were not cheap tools. A single war chariot cost the equivalent of a modern luxury vehicle, and they needed to last. Archaeologists excavating the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922 discovered something unexpected alongside the gold and the artifacts. Residue. A specific organic compound coating the iron components of the royal chariots. A compound that had kept those metal parts stable and protected for over 3,000 years underground. 3,000 years. Your current undercoating cannot survive 3 winters. Move forward to ancient Rome, 200 years after Christ. The Roman Navy controlled the entire Mediterranean Sea with a fleet of warships held together by iron nails and iron fittings. Saltwater is the single most aggressive accelerant of rust that exists in nature. And yet Roman shipwrecks recovered from the Mediterranean floor show iron components with corrosion rates that modern marine engineers describe as, and I am quoting directly from a peer-reviewed study published by the University of Bologna, inconsistent with the expected degradation timeline without the presence of a protective barrier compound. They were using the same thing the Egyptians used, passed down through centuries of engineering knowledge. Aristotle documented it. not as a curiosity, as a practical material science observation. In his writings on metals and their interactions with the natural world, he described a substance that, when applied to iron, created what he called an interruption of the air. He did not have the vocabulary of electrochemistry, but he was describing exactly what modern science now confirms happens at the molecular level. Fast forward to 1967. NASA is preparing materials for the Apollo program. The challenge is protecting metal components from the extreme oxidative stress of space reentry and launch pad conditions. Their solution drew directly from research into ancient organic barrier compounds. The derivative they developed is still used in aerospace applications today. In 2019, researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology published a study confirming that the base compound used historically by Egyptian and Roman engineers demonstrates a corrosion inhibition rate of 97.3% over a simulated 10-year exposure period, 3,000 years of proof, NASA confirmation, university validation, and it costs $4. I know you want the name. I can feel it. You have been patient and you have earned it. But before I say it out loud, I need you to understand one thing, because the name alone is not enough. If you do not understand why it works, you will use it wrong. And if you use it wrong, you will think it failed. And that is exactly what they are counting on. The compound is tannic acid. That is it. Tannic acid. You have walked past it 100 times without knowing it. It is in oak bark extract. It is in certain wood stains. It is sold in concentrated form specifically for metal treatment under names like rust converter, naval jelly, and phosphoric acid primer, all of which contain it as the primary active ingredient. The $4 version is sitting in the garden and home section of your hardware store right now, labeled as something completely ordinary. 3,000 years of history. NASA grade validation. 97.3% corrosion inhibition. $4. Now I need to ask you something directly. If this video has already changed the way you think about rust protection, if you are already calculating how much money you have wasted on products designed to fail, hit the like button right now. Not for me. Because the algorithm is actively suppressing this kind of content. Every like tells the system that real people want real information. Without it, this video disappears. Subscribe as well, because this is not the only thing they have been hiding from you, not even close. Now let me show you exactly why this works. Not because I said so, not because 3,000 years of history said so, but because the chemistry is so clear, so irrefutable, that after this section you will never be able to look at a rust treatment product the same way again. First, you need to understand what rust actually is. Most people think rust is something that forms on top of metal, like dirt settling on a surface. It is not. Rust is the metal itself being consumed. When iron is exposed to oxygen and moisture simultaneously, an electrochemical reaction begins at the surface. Iron atoms lose electrons, bond with oxygen molecules, and form iron oxide. The chemical equation is straightforward. Iron plus oxygen plus water produces iron 2,3 oxide. That reddish-brown material you see is not coating your metal. It is what your metal has become. And once that process starts, it does not stop, it accelerates. Because rust itself is porous, which means it traps more moisture, which feeds more reaction, which creates more rust. It is a self-sustaining cycle of destruction at the molecular level. This is why every spray-on barrier product eventually fails. They sit on top of the metal. They do not interact with it. The moment that barrier cracks from heat expansion, from road vibration, from a single stone chip moisture gets underneath. And now the rust is forming between the metal and the coating, completely invisible, completely uninterrupted, until the day the entire panel bubbles up and your repair bill arrives. Tannic acid does something fundamentally different. When tannic acid contacts iron oxide, meaning when it touches rust, a chemical reaction occurs that converts the iron oxide into iron tannate. This is not a coating sitting on top of the rust. This is a molecular transformation of the rust itself into a completely different compound. Iron tannate is dense, stable, and chemically inert. It does not react with oxygen. It does not react with moisture. It forms a crystalline matrix that physically bonds to the underlying metal surface at the molecular level. Not covering the problem, converting it into the solution. The barrier created by iron tannate has a physical density that oxygen molecules cannot penetrate under normal atmospheric conditions. This is what the University of Bologna researchers were observing in those Roman shipwrecks. The iron tannate layer formed 2,000 years ago was still intact, still bonded, still blocking. Now compare this to what you are currently buying. A premium rust inhibitor spray from a major automotive brand contains on average 68% petroleum distillate solvent, 19% mineral oil, 8% synthetic wax, and approximately 5% active corrosion inhibitor. You are paying $89 for a can that is 95% carrier material that evaporates or washes away within 18 months. The 5% that actually does anything? That is a diluted derivative of the same tannic acid mechanism, diluted intentionally. Because concentrated, it would last forever. And forever does not generate repeat purchases. The chemistry was never the mystery. The mystery was always the motive. Now let us actually do this. No special equipment, no professional training, no expensive tools. Everything I am about to describe is available within 5 miles of where you are sitting right now, and the entire process takes less than 60 minutes from start to finish. Here's what you need. A wire brush or 80 grit sandpaper either works, both cost under $3, a clean dry cloth, isopropyl alcohol, which you already have in your medicine cabinet, and your tannic acid compound. Look for Rust Converter at any hardware store, any auto parts store, or on any major online retailer. The brand does not matter. The active ingredient is what matters. You are looking for tannic acid or phosphoric acid listed as the primary active component. Price range: $3 to $6 for a bottle that will treat your entire vehicle twice over. That is your complete toolkit. Under $15 total, including the product. Step 1 takes 5 minutes. Use your wire brush or sandpaper to remove loose rust from the affected area. I want to be very clear about something here because this is where most people overthink it and do nothing. You do not need to sand down to bare, shining metal. You do not need to remove every trace of rust. You only need to remove the loose, flaking, unstable rust that has no adhesion to the surface. The rust that is still bonded to the metal, the dark, hard, pitted rust, leave it exactly where it is. That is what the tannic acid is going to convert. That is its food. You are not cleaning the surface for paint. You are preparing it for a chemical reaction. Step 2 takes 2 minutes. Wipe the area down with your isopropyl alcohol on a clean cloth. This removes grease, oil, and any surface contamination that could interfere with the chemical bonding process. Wait 90 seconds for it to fully evaporate. Do not skip this step. Surface contamination is the single most common reason the process underperforms. Step 3 takes 2 minutes to apply and 45 minutes to work. Apply your tannic acid converter directly to the rusted surface using a brush, a foam applicator, or even a folded piece of cloth. You want full coverage, but you do not want pooling. A thin, even coat is more effective than a thick, uneven one. Then put everything down. Walk away. The chemistry is happening whether you watch it or not. You will see the surface begin to shift color from reddish-brown rust toward a dark gray or matte black. That color change is iron tannate forming in real time. That is the reaction you are watching. That is 3,000 years of chemistry working on your car in your driveway. Within 24 hours, the treated surface reaches full chemical stability. Within 30 days, the iron tannate matrix achieves maximum density and hardness. After that, apply a top coat of your choice. Any standard primer or paint works perfectly over iron tannate, and you are finished. Completely finished. Not for this season. Not until next year. Finished. One last practical note. If you live within 20 miles of the ocean, apply 2 coats with a 4-hour gap between them. Salt air is the most aggressive oxidative environment a vehicle will face, and the double layer adds a margin that coastal conditions demand. Other than that single adjustment, the process is identical regardless of your climate, your vehicle age, or the severity of the existing rust. 60 minutes, $15. Permanent. Let us talk about money. Specifically, your money. The money you have already spent and the money they are planning to take from you next year. The average American spends between $120 and $350 per year on rust protection products and treatments. Dealership undercoating packages run between $290 and $490 at point of sale. Professional rust-proofing services charge between $150 and $300 annually for reapplication. Over the lifespan of a vehicle, typically 14 years in the current market, that is a conservative total of between $1,680 and $4,900 spent on a problem that was never actually being solved, just delayed, just managed, just enough to get you back next year. 1 bottle of tannic acid converter, $4, applied once, never again. The delta between those two numbers is not a discount. It is not a better deal. It is the exact financial cost of not knowing what you know right now. Every dollar above $4 that you have ever spent on rust treatment was a tax on ignorance that an entire industry built its revenue model around collecting. The $412 billion corrosion industry does not fear competition from other chemical companies. It does not fear new technology. The single thing it fears most is exactly what is happening right now. Someone explaining the mechanism clearly enough that the math becomes undeniable. $4 against $4,900 over 14 years. That is not a comparison. That is an indictment. They did not build a $412 billion industry because rust is a hard problem to solve. They built it because they solved it first, buried the solution, and then charged you every year to not quite fix it. Now you know. You just did something that most people will never do. You sat through the information they did not want you to have. You followed the chemistry. You ran the numbers. And now you are on the other side of a wall that $412 billion was specifically built to keep you from crossing. That is not nothing. That is everything. Right now, somewhere, a dealership is preparing to charge someone $350 for 40 minutes of work, applying a product that will fail in 18 months. That person does not know what you know. Your neighbor does not know. Your brother does not know. The person in your office who just bought a new truck and is about to get upsold on a protection package at the finance desk, they do not know. Sharing this video is not a favor to me. I want to be completely clear about that. Sharing this video is the single most direct thing you can do to drain revenue from a system that has been extracting money from ordinary people for decades. Every person who watches this is one fewer customer walking into that dealership undercoating bay. That is how you fight a $412 billion industry. Not with lawyers, not with legislation, with information moving faster than they can suppress it. Save this video before it gets buried. Share it with one person who owns a car. Drop a comment below telling me exactly how much money you have spent on rust treatment over the years. I want to see the real number. $4. That is all it ever needed to be.